The HOA president was standing in my driveway, her face red, her voice shaking with anger. Behind her stood 2 board members and a county sheriff's deputy. She was pointing at my fence like it was evidence in a criminal trial. "This is a clear violation," she said. "You built this without approval. You ignored our warnings, and now you're going to pay for it." The deputy looked at me, then at her, then back at me. He hadn't said much yet, just listened, took notes. The kind of calm professionalism you'd expect from someone who's seen this type of thing before. I stood there, arms crossed, leaning against my truck. I wasn't nervous, I wasn't angry, I was just ready. Because what Karen didn't know was that this fence she was so worked up about, it wasn't even on HOA property. In fact, the section of land she'd been threatening me over for the past 3 months didn't belong to the HOA at all. It belonged to me, and I had the paperwork to prove it. But let me back up, because this whole mess didn't start with a sheriff's deputy in my driveway. It started with a letter. One of those official-looking letters with the HOA logo at the top and a list of violations typed out in bold, like they were handing down commandments from on high. The letter said I was in violation of community standards, that my property was an eyesore, that I had 30 days to comply or face fines, daily fines, the kind that stack up fast if you ignore them. I read it twice. Then I read it again, because the thing they were citing, it didn't make any sense. They were claiming I'd built a fence without permission, a fence that crossed into common area property, a fence that violated setback rules and aesthetic guidelines. Except I hadn't built a fence, not recently anyway. The fence they were talking about had been there for 7 years. It was already standing when I bought the house, and it wasn't on common property. It was on my land, my surveyed, legally documented, recorded with the county land. But Karen didn't care about any of that. She'd decided the fence was a problem. And once Karen decides something is a problem, she doesn't stop until someone makes her. My name's not important. What matters is that I'm a homeowner in a planned community just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. It's one of those neighborhoods where every house looks almost identical. The lawns are kept short. And there's a list of rules about what color you can paint your mailbox. I bought my house 5 years ago. It's a 3-bedroom ranch on a corner lot, which means I've got a little more yard space than most people in the neighborhood. The property line runs along the back and wraps around the side, where there's a 6-foot wooden privacy fence that separates my yard from a small wooded area. That wooded area? It's not part of the HOA's common space. It's not a park. It's not a walking trail. It's just woods, county land, undeveloped. When I had the property surveyed before I closed on the house, the surveyor confirmed that my lot extends right up to the tree line. The fence sits about 2 feet inside my property line. Totally legal. Totally mine. I didn't think much about it when I moved in. The fence was already there, in good shape, and it gave me some privacy. I've got a dog, so it was convenient. I didn't need to build anything new or ask anyone's permission for something that was already standing. For the first few years, everything was fine. The HOA sent out the usual newsletters, reminders about trash pickup, notifications about the annual meeting, a few complaints here and there about someone's lawn or a car parked on the street too long. Normal HOA stuff. Then Karen got elected president. Her real name is Margaret, but everyone calls her Karen, though not to her face. She's in her late 50s, retired, and has the kind of free time that becomes dangerous when combined with a little bit of authority. Now, she ran for HOA president on a platform of restoring community standards, which really just meant she wanted an excuse to tell people what to do. Within 2 months of taking office, she'd started sending out violation notices like they were going out of style. Someone's mailbox was the wrong shade of black. Someone's front porch light was too bright. Someone had a political sign up 2 days past the election. And then she noticed my fence. I don't know what triggered it. Maybe she was walking her dog and saw it from a weird angle. Maybe someone complained. Though I doubt it. I don't have any close neighbors on that side. Whatever the reason, she decided the fence was a problem. And once Karen decides something is a problem, it becomes everyone's problem. The first letter came in the mail on a Tuesday. It had the HOA logo at the top and was signed by Margaret herself in her capacity as president. The letter stated that my fence was in violation of community guidelines because it had been constructed without prior approval and extended into common area space. I read it. Then I reread it. Then I walked outside and looked at the fence, just to make sure I wasn't missing something. Nope. Same fence, same position, same property line. I pulled out my closing documents, found the survey, and confirmed what I already knew. The fence was on my property. It wasn't touching HOA land. It wasn't even close. So I wrote back. Polite. Professional. I attached a copy of the survey and explained that the fence was well within my property boundaries and had been there long before I bought the house. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, Karen showed up at my door. It was a Saturday morning. I was in my garage, working on my truck, when I heard the doorbell. I wiped my hands on a rag, walked to the front door, and there she was. Clipboard in hand, sunglasses on, the kind of posture that says she's used to being in charge. "Good morning," I said. "We need to talk about your fence," she said. No greeting, no small talk, straight to business. "I sent you a survey," I said. "The fence is on my property." "I saw your survey," she said. "But the HOA guidelines clearly state that any fence construction requires board approval. You didn't get approval." "I didn't build the fence," I said. "It was already there when I bought the house." "That's irrelevant," she said. "If it's not in compliance with current standards, it needs to be corrected." I stared at her for a second, trying to figure out if she was serious. She was. "The fence is on my property," I said again, slower this time. "It's not on HOA land. It doesn't affect common areas. It's been there for years." "It's an eyesore," she said, "and it sets a bad precedent. If we let you keep it, everyone will think they can just put up whatever they want." "I didn't put up anything," I said. "It was already here." She sighed, like I was being difficult on purpose. "Look," she said, "I don't make the rules. The board voted. The fence needs to come down, or you need to apply for retroactive approval and pay the associated fees." "How much are the fees?" I asked. $500 for the application, another $200 for the inspection, and if it's not approved, you'll be responsible for removal costs plus a fine. I let that sink in. "So you want me to pay $700 for permission to keep a fence that's already on my property, that I didn't build, and that doesn't violate any actual rule?" "That's correct," she said. I laughed. I couldn't help it. "I'm not doing that," I said. Her expression hardened. "Then you'll be fined," she said. $50 a day until you comply." "You can't fine me for something that's not a violation," I said. "We'll see about that," she said, and she turned and walked back to her car. I stood there in my doorway, watching her drive away, and I realized this wasn't going to be simple. Karen wasn't interested in facts. She wasn't interested in property lines or surveys or common sense. She was interested in winning, and she thought she already had. Now let me ask you something. If someone showed up at your door and told you to tear down something that was legally yours, on your own property, and threatened to fine you if you didn't, what would you do? Would you fight it? Would you pay the fees just to make it go away? Drop a comment and let me know, because I'd love to hear how you'd handle it. The fines started 2 weeks later. I got another letter. This one was less polite. It stated that I had failed to comply with the previous notice and that I was now being assessed a $50 per day fine, retroactive to the date of the original violation notice. I did the math. At $50 a day, that was $1,500 in fines already, and counting. I called the HOA management company. They put me through to someone named Lisa, who sounded tired and apologetic before I even said anything. "I understand your frustration," she said, "but the board has the authority to issue fines for non-compliance." "Non-compliance with what?" I said. "The fence is on my property. I sent them a survey." "I see that in the file," she said. "But the board's position is that the fence was never approved, so it's still a violation." "That doesn't make any sense," I said. "I know," she said quietly. "But my hands are tied. You'd need to appeal to the board directly." So I did. I submitted a formal appeal. I attached the survey again, along with photos of the property line markers, a copy of my deed, and a written statement explaining that the fence had been installed by the previous owner and was entirely on my land. The board scheduled a hearing for the following month. In the meantime, the fines kept adding up. I also started getting phone calls. From Karen, from other board members, from neighbors I barely knew, asking me why I was causing problems and making the neighborhood look bad. I wasn't doing anything. I was just refusing to pay for something I didn't owe. But Karen was spinning it differently. She was telling people I was defiant, that I was ignoring the rules, that I was being difficult for no reason. And people believed her. Because she had a title. Because she had authority. Because most people don't question the HOA when it sends them a letter. Then came the towing threat. I came home from work one day and found a notice zip-tied to my mailbox. It said that vehicles parked in driveways were required to be moved every 72 hours to prevent abandoned vehicle violations. If a vehicle remained stationary for more than 3 days, it could be towed at the owner's expense. I looked at my truck. It hadn't moved in 4 days. I'd been working from home. I didn't need to drive it. But now, apparently, that was a violation too. I moved the truck. And then I moved it again 3 days later. And then again, just to avoid giving them another excuse. It was exhausting, and it was intentional. Karen was looking for any reason to escalate, any excuse to stack on more fines, more pressure, more consequences. She wanted me to break, to give up, to pay the fees and tear down the fence just to make it stop. But I wasn't going to, because I was right, and she was wrong, and I had the paperwork to prove it. Does this sound like someone trying to enforce rules, or does it sound like a power trip? Because from where I was standing, it felt a lot more like the second one. Let me know what you think in the comments. The board hearing finally came. I showed up with a folder full of documents, survey, deed, photos, a printed timeline of every interaction I'd had with Karen and the HOA. I was ready. The hearing was held in the community clubhouse, which is just a small building with a kitchen and a conference room. There were 5 board members sitting at a table, including Karen at the center. I sat across from them and presented my case. I explained that the fence was installed by the previous owner, that it was entirely on my property, that I had a survey proving it, that there was no violation of setback rules, aesthetic guidelines, or any other HOA regulation. Karen interrupted me twice. Once to say that the survey didn't matter because the fence was still unapproved. Once to say that I was being argumentative. I stayed calm. I stuck to the facts. When I finished, the board asked a few questions. One of them asked if I'd be willing to apply for retroactive approval. I said I would, as long as the fines were waived and the application fee was waived, since I hadn't built the fence in the first place. Karen didn't like that. She started arguing that waiving the fees would set a bad precedent. But one of the other board members, an older guy named Tom, cut her off. "Margaret, he's got a survey," Tom said. "The fence is on his property. I don't see how we can fine him for that." There was a long silence. Karen's jaw tightened. She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. "We'll take it under advisement," she said finally. "You'll receive our decision in writing within 2 weeks." I left the hearing feeling cautiously optimistic. Tom had backed me up. The other board members seemed reasonable. Maybe this would actually get resolved. 2 weeks later, I got a letter. The board had voted to uphold the violation. The fines would continue. I had 30 days to remove the fence or face additional penalties. The letter was signed by Karen. Tom's name wasn't on it. I found out later that he'd resigned from the board the day after the hearing. That's when Karen made her next move. I was in my backyard, cleaning up some leaves, when I heard voices in my driveway. I walked around the side of the house and saw Karen standing there with 2 other board members and a sheriff's deputy. My stomach dropped. The deputy was tall, mid-40s, wearing the standard uniform. He had a calm, neutral expression, the kind of look that says he's been through this before. Karen saw me and pointed. "That's him," she said. "That's the homeowner." The deputy nodded and walked over. "Afternoon," he said. "I'm Deputy Harris. I got a call about a property dispute. Mind if we talk for a minute?" "Not at all," I said. Karen stepped forward. "He built an illegal fence," she said. "It's on HOA property. He's been fined, and he's refusing to comply. We've tried to resolve this, but he won't listen." I looked at the deputy. "That's not accurate," I said calmly. "The fence is on my property. I have a survey that proves it. The HOA is claiming it's a violation, but it's not." "Do you have that survey with you?" the deputy asked. "I do," I said. "Give me a second." I went inside, grabbed the folder I'd brought to the board hearing, and came back out. I handed the survey to the deputy. He looked it over, took his time, didn't rush. Karen was fidgeting. She kept glancing at the other board members like she was expecting them to back her up. "This says the fence is 2 feet inside your property line," the deputy said. "That's correct," I said. "And when was this survey done?" "Before I bought the house," I said. 5 years ago. It's recorded with the county." The deputy nodded. He looked at Karen. "Do you have any documentation that shows the fence is on HOA property?" he asked. Karen hesitated. "We don't need documentation," she said. "The fence violates HOA guidelines. He didn't get approval." "That's not a criminal matter," the deputy said. "That's a civil issue. If he's on his own property and he's not breaking any county ordinances, there's nothing I can do here." Karen's face went red. "But he's refusing to comply," she said. "He's been fined. He owes the HOA money." "Then you'll need to take him to court," the deputy said. "But I can't enforce HOA rules. That's not what we do." He handed the survey back to me. "You're good," he said. "Sorry to bother you." "No problem," I said. The deputy walked back to his car. Karen stood there, frozen, staring at me like I'd just pulled off some kind of trick. But I hadn't done anything. I'd just told the truth. Have you ever seen someone call the police over something this small? Because I couldn't believe it either. If you've got a story like this, share it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. After the deputy left, I thought that would be the end of it. But Karen wasn't done. 2 days later, I got another letter. This one said the HOA was moving forward with legal action to enforce the fines. They were going to place a lien on my property, a lien, for a fence that was on my own land. That's when I decided to stop playing defense. I contacted a real estate attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. I explained the situation, sent him all my documents, and asked what my options were. He reviewed everything and called me back the next day. "They don't have a case," he said. "The fence is on your property. The survey is clear. They can't fine you for something that's not a violation." "So what do I do?" I asked. "We send them a cease and desist," he said. "And if they don't back off, we file a lawsuit for harassment and abuse of process." I gave him the go-ahead. The cease and desist letter went out the following week. It was professional, clear, and firm. It stated that the HOA's actions were baseless, that the fines were invalid, and that any attempt to place a lien on my property would result in legal action. The attorney also included something I hadn't thought of, a demand for all HOA records related to the fence, including any surveys, engineering reports, or documentation that supported their claim that the fence was on common property. Because if they didn't have that documentation, they had no case. And I was willing to bet they didn't. Sure enough, 2 weeks later, I got a response. Not from Karen, from the HOA's attorney. The letter was short. It said the board was reviewing the matter and would respond within 30 days. Translation: they didn't have anything. But here's where it gets interesting. While I was waiting for their response, I did some digging. I went to the county assessor's office and pulled up the plat maps for the neighborhood. I looked at the original HOA declarations from when the community was first developed. And I found something. The wooded area behind my fence, the one Karen kept insisting was HOA common property, it wasn't. It had never been. When the neighborhood was built, that land was designated as a conservation easement. It belonged to the county, not the HOA. The HOA didn't have any legal claim to it. They didn't maintain it. They didn't control it, which meant they couldn't regulate what I did on my side of the property line. I sent that information to my attorney. He sent it to the HOA's attorney, and then everything went quiet. A month later, I got a final letter from the HOA. It was short and formal. It stated that after further review, the board had determined that the fence was not in violation of HOA guidelines. All fines were being waived. The matter was closed. No apology. No acknowledgement of the time and money I'd spent fighting this. Just a quiet retreat. But it wasn't completely over. Because word got around. Turns out, I wasn't the only homeowner Karen had targeted. Once people heard I'd fought back and won, others started coming forward. Someone she'd fined for a mailbox. Someone she'd threatened over a tree. Someone she'd tried to tow for parking in their own driveway. All of them had paid the fines. Because they didn't know they could fight it. But now they did. Within 3 months, there was a petition to recall the board. Karen resigned before the vote even happened. The new board president was Tom, the guy who'd backed me up in the hearing and then quit in frustration. One of his first actions? He commissioned a full survey of the neighborhood's property lines and common areas, so there'd be no more confusion about who owned what. The HOA also revised their fine policy to require actual documentation before issuing violations. I didn't ask for any of that. I just wanted to keep my fence. But sometimes standing your ground doesn't just protect you. It protects everyone else too. Do you think Karen saw this coming? Or do you think she really believed she was untouchable? Let me know what you think. It's been a year since all this happened, and things have been quiet. The fence is still standing. My dog still has her yard. And the HOA hasn't sent me a single violation notice since Tom took over. I see Karen around the neighborhood sometimes. She doesn't make eye contact, just keeps walking. I don't hold a grudge. I'm not the type. But I also don't forget. What I learned from all of this is pretty simple. Know your property, know your rights, and don't assume someone with a title knows more than you do. Karen thought she could steamroll me because she had authority. But authority without facts is just noise. And when you've got the facts on your side, All you have to do is stay calm and let the truth do the work. It's not always easy. It's not always fast. But it's worth it. Because at the end of the day, it's your property, your home, and no one has the right to take that from you just because they feel like it. So that's the story of how an HOA president tried to fine me for a fence that was legally mine, and how it all fell apart when the facts came out. If you've dealt with an HOA nightmare, or if you've got a Karen story of your own, I'd love to hear it. Drop it in the comments. And if you want to see more stories like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because trust me, there are plenty more where this came from. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Have you ever had to deal with an HOA that overstepped? Or a neighbor who thought they were in charge when they weren't? Share your experience in the comments below. I read every single one.